Okay, so let's get into a topic that I think touches almost all of us, but we rarely talk about it, not with this kind of honesty. We're talking about the slow, silent drift that happens between siblings. How we grow up and almost without noticing, we grow apart. It's a really tender, complex thing, so let's try to unpack it together. So it really all comes down to this one question, doesn't it? What actually happens to these incredibly foundational bonds, the first friends we ever have, as life, with all of its twists and turns and demands, just moves on? And this quote, this really gets to the absolute heart of it. The closeness we had as kids, it wasn't always something we chose or worked at. It was structural. It was built into the very architecture of our childhoods, a natural side effect of living in a shared world. So let's start right there with that unintentional bond. What did that structural closeness actually look and feel like, day in and day out? And maybe more importantly, why did it feel so easy? I mean, think about it. It was built on all the small, constant things, right? Shared rooms, shared meals, shared routines, even just sharing silence in the same house. We fought, we made up, we got on each other's nerves, we depended on each other for everything, and we never once had to schedule a call to do it. It was a bond that was just there, forged by proximity, not by effort. And then, well, then life happens. And this begins the slow separation. And the painful part is that it's a process that's usually not driven by some big fight or a loss of love, but by the simple, unstoppable force of just living your own life. And this is such a good way to see that shift. Back then, we lived in a shared reality. One house, one set of rules, one world. But now we live with what the source material calls contextual distance. We're all living in our own separate worlds with our own problems and our own routines. And that common language we used to have just gets harder and harder to hold on to. And these are the big things that do it without anyone meaning for them to. One sibling becomes really successful financially while another one struggles. One moves halfway across the world, the other one stays put in the hometown. Each new life path isn't a deliberate step away from each other, but each one adds another layer of that contextual distance, usually long before we ever feel an emotional one. For generations, there was this unspoken system that, for better or worse, kind of kept these differences from breaking things. The age hierarchy. The oldest was the oldest. The youngest was the youngest. Authority was just inherited. It wasn't always fair, not at all, but it created a stable framework. It kind of turned down the volume on all that natural competition and comparison. So what happens when you introduce a totally new person into that old, established system? Yeah, let's look at one of the biggest catalysts for change there is, when a spouse comes into the picture. Someone who wasn't raised inside that family's unwritten rules. And you can literally see the collision right here. A spouse comes in expecting an equality-aced partnership, where authority is earned and boundaries are respected. But they're walking into a hierarchy-based family, where authority has always been based on age, and the boundaries can feel, well, pretty blurry. It's like two different operating systems trying to run on the same computer. It just doesn't work smoothly. And this is the absolute key. It's not about one person being right and the other being wrong. It's that what one system calls completely normal, like a sibling dropping by unannounced, the other system sees as interference. A casual question for a brother might feel like a total boundary violation to his wife. These systems just aren't compatible. All right, now we need to turn to a topic that is just so uncomfortable, but it's one of the most powerful forces in this entire dynamic. And that is the silence around money. We just have to acknowledge this. When you strip everything else away, financial differences are so often the number one source of unspoken tension between adult siblings. It's the massive elephant in every single room. It's the thing that everyone feels, but almost no one is willing to name. And this is how that imbalance just slowly eats away at the relationship. Love starts to feel careful. Every interaction gets weighed for some hidden meaning. An offer of help, even from a good place, can create these really complex feelings of obligation. And then refusing that help can come across as pride, like a rejection. And the silence around all of it, that just lets resentment build and curdle over time. The distance that grows isn't about cruelty. It's about dignity trying to protect itself. So all of this, it leads to a feeling that I think a lot of us have had. We still say, I love you, and we mean it. Of course we do. So why can the connection itself just feel so empty, so hollow? And here it is, the painful, honest truth. It's because memory has replaced presence. Our bond shifts from being about a shared life to being about a shared past. We're connected by stories of remember when, not by the messy reality of today. And nostalgia, as wonderful as it is, just can't substitute for a real, living, breathing connection. And this is what we're actually grieving. It's not just the distance itself, it's the loss of this feeling. The feeling that you don't need a reason to show up, that you can just belong. We're grieving the loss of informality, of that unspoken permission to just be there, messy and unfiltered, without an invitation. That easy access, that's what intimacy is really made of.
So, okay, if some of this drift is just an inevitable part of modern life, then what's honestly left for us? Where do we go from here?
Maybe the answer isn't to fight it. Maybe it's not about trying to force things back to the way they were, trying to recreate a past that just doesn't exist anymore. Perhaps the real path forward is to just shift our whole perspective, to stop trying to force permanence, and instead to simply honor what was real for the time that it was real. And this is what that new reality could look like. It's something quieter, maybe more mature. It's about finding respect without needing that old hierarchy. It's about contact that doesn't feel like a heavy obligation. It's finding those little pockets where spontaneity is still possible. But really, in the end, it's all about acceptance. And this, right here, might be the most profound insight in all of this. The grief we feel, it's not a sign that our families are broken or that we've failed. It's actually the invisible price we pay for success. It's the cost of living these fuller, freer, more independent lives that our ancestors could have only dreamed of. And maybe that's where we have to land. Just acknowledging this price, it doesn't magically fix the distance. It doesn't take away the sadness, but it does do something incredibly powerful. It makes the loss honest. It validates that ache you feel. And sometimes, just making things honest, that's a kind of peace in itself.